Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the DataON March webinar for 2018. Thank you for attending. This is Howard, and I'll be the moderator for this webinar. So before we start, I want to make sure that we introduce all the speakers. We have a great lineup today. The title of this webinar this time is Best Practices for Deploying Windows Server 2016 Hyper-Converged Infrastructure. And these are the partners and customers that we have invited to share their best practices. We'll go through the webinar, and we'll have Karsten from a Microsoft MVP. We have Matt from Veeam, Chris from Western Digital, Louis from Qwest, and I'll wrap it up. You can always type in questions if you have, and then we'll try to answer them toward the end of the day. So as an agenda today, I will start off, talk about momentum. Then Karsten will share his best practice as a Microsoft MVP. Chris Matt from Veeam will talk about how Veeam and Windows 16 works together, especially the REFS. Chris from Western Digital will share their technology and product, especially NVMe. Louis, as a customer, will talk to you guys about their deployment and their best practice, and DataON will follow up with our overall wrap-up. As on housekeeping, you will be muted during the webinar, and the chat window opens. Feel free to ask questions you have, and we'll capture all of them and try to answer them towards the end of the webinar. And we have listed all the social media tags, so if you guys want to follow and use on Twitter, feel free to do so. So let's get started. As many of you know, Microsoft's been on this journey of delivering a enterprise-level storage hyper-converged infrastructure since 2012. And I always tell a lot of our customers, I feel like it's the best-kept secret in the marketplace because they have a great technology. Especially 2016, when they launched the hyper-converged infrastructure running storage spaces direct. It's been a great platform for the industry, for the customer, and also DataON, which we've been very successful deploying these solutions. I think it reinforces the fact a month ago that Gartner published their latest HCI report, which is really the Magic Quadrant. In that new report, they show that Microsoft, their solution based on storage spaces direct, is now a visionary for the software-defined storage world for hyper-converged infrastructure. This is a great proof point and testament for a lot of enterprise customers that Microsoft have really stepped up and developed a great solution and platform that is ready for enterprise and ready for prime time. More importantly, I think, is as you look through the entire portfolio of Windows, they do have a great solution to deliver end-to-end solution both on-premise, hybrid, and cloud solution, which really allow customers to have a really integrated solution as they migrate to the path of the storage architecture. In addition to that, Microsoft came out with a lot of validation testing platforms, such as the Windows Software-Defined Solution, which DataON is part of. These are platforms that they have pre-validated to ensure that the solution is good for the enterprise customer. As a quick DataON, we've been very fortunate that as we continue to be a Microsoft exclusive platform, we've been deploying a lot of solutions across for the last 18 months, and for 2016, we have now over 120 petabytes of storage in play, which is a lot of learning from our perspective, and as a result, we want to share a lot of best practices with our end user and customer. That's why we brought all the partners in to share their solution. Lastly, please do, as you look at solution from Windows, look at all their certification validation tools to make sure the hardware you choose ultimately is the right solution, and that's all certified and vouched by Microsoft as a predefined solution under WSSD. With that, I would like to pass the baton and the podium to Karsten, a Microsoft MVP, to share his best practices for Windows HCI. Here you go, Karsten.
Yeah, thank you, Howard. I hope you can hear me. My name is Karsten Achfal. I'm from Germany, an MVP for I think 8 years now, and I want to talk with you about our storage spaces direct best practices. we have implemented over the last 18 months. Storage Spaces Direct is available since October 2016. Over 50 Storage Spaces Direct solutions at customers, and I will share some numbers with you. We deployed, most of them are hyper-converged, so Hyper-V and storage in the same cluster. Some of them are converged, like we did it with Storage Spaces before. Howard was talking about Storage Spaces. It is available from 2012 on, and you can still do a scale-out file server deployment with Storage Spaces Direct. But we are talking, of course, mainly about the Hyper-Converged infrastructure, HCI. So of these installations, most of them are 4-node clusters. We have done some 2-node clusters, and DataON has a nice solution there, the Kepler 47 solution. If you don't know it, please have a look onto it. It's a very nice 2-box design. We have done some 2 nodes, some 3 nodes, some more than 4 nodes clustered implementations, but most of them, let's say, more than 70% are 4-node clusters. I have brought with me 3 example implementations from different customers, 2 customer implementations and 1 implementation of our own that we are running here in our company. For example, one is a 3-node mixed POC that we have done recently with the new Intel processors, 2 server 10-core processors with 384 gigabytes of RAM, 2 dual-port 40 gig Mellanox NICs, some crazy Intel Optane NVMe's, and there are also very great ones available from HGST. We will hear a little bit about them later, with some SSDs and some HDDs. And this solution, I don't know if you can read the screenshot, but we also always measure the solutions, and it has 450,000 8K IOPS. And when we measure the solutions, we always do not only read, we also do write. And this test was done with 70% read and 30% write. And you see, you have a huge amount of performance in those Storage Spaces Direct systems, and this is only a 3-node design with 3-way mirror. I have another one that is on the more extreme part. It's a 4-node design with 16-core processors, so 2 16-core processors, half a terabyte of RAMs, and in this scenario we have 100 gigabit Mellanox NICs. Some people said that's crazy, but if you increase the network that you have between your nodes, you get more bandwidth. And in this scenario, there are 2 NVMe's, 4 SSDs, and also some HDDs. And this scenario brings nearly 1.5 million 4K IOPS. Again, we leverage also write. So this test was done with 30% write, and we also try to also leverage a little bit the HDD. So we are not only measuring the flash storage, we also measure a little bit of the HDD. The last scenario I want to talk about is our little DataON test cluster. We are so happy that we have 4 DataON nodes here, 1 U node. It's not the newest platform, but it's the platform that was actually last year. It was actual, and they are 6-core processors. So we have 2 6-core processors in the system, some memory. We have 25 gigabit Mellanox in there, some NVMe, some SSDs, and also it's an all-flash design with great switches between them. And this small design, even you can get 500,000 8K IOPS with a huge write portion. So to reach such numbers, and I know performance is not everything. Most of the customers where we implement Storage Spaces Direct don't need 500,000 IOPS, but it's very, you have a great assurance if you know your system can deliver such performance, even if you only need 50,000 IOPS on average. So I will share some of our best practices. I have only 2 slides here. I do actually a 3-day full storage basis direct course where we talk about all of it, but I looked at the parts that are most important in storage basis direct, and one is the storage part and one is the network part. So if you can afford NVMEs, and actually NVMEs are not much more expensive than SSDs, go with NVMEs, because NVMEs deliver so much more performance. In essence, if it's the same flash, if you have an SSD, the same flash storage, it's attached to a SATA bus or a SAS bus, and in comparison, an NVMe is connected to a PCI Express bus, you have 3 to 4 times more performance for not so much more money. You could say maybe 30% more or 40% more for the same amount of flash. So go with NVMe. What I like to do in most scenarios, and you have seen it in the examples, we have NVMEs, we have SSDs, and we have HDDs. So in this scenario, the NVMEs are used for caching. That's a very great caching device, and we use SSD as performance devices. So, and the HDDs are for the cold data. Not many people know that, but storage basis direct is capable of real-time tiering or real-time tiering. So in this scenario, when a write is going down from a virtual machine, it lands in the NVMEs and then is written to the SSDs. So all writes in this scenario are done to the SSDs. When the SSDs get fuller, so let's say 60%, then there is an online tiering happening to the HDD. So only your coldest or your colder data is tiered to the HDD. So in this scenario, you have your maximum performance. You have great caching devices. You have a great write performance through the SSDs, and you have a not so expensive storage for your colder data. So if it's possible, and DataON is doing great designs here, go with the 3-tier design. So when you do that, when you choose NVMe, SSD, and HDD, often the question is how much NVMe should I choose? How much SSD should I choose? So the numbers we use, we are saying for the caching devices, you should have 10% of the capacity devices in a node. So let's assume you have 6 10 terabyte HDDs and you have 4 2 terabyte SSDs. That's in total, I said 6 plus 4, so that's 60, that's 68 terabyte of devices. Then you should have 6.8 terabyte of NVMe, so of caching devices, if you leverage all the storage. And then you should have at least 20% of SSDs of your storage. If you go with those numbers, you are on the safe side, so you have a very performant system. One other thing that is very important, so if you have, for example, a 10 terabyte HDD in your system, and there will be a time you use all the storage, and after 3 years, after 4 years, you have maybe a failure of one disk. So one of the 10 terabyte disks fails. Now it's very important that you have the possibility to restore the data while the system is running without maybe replacing the disk. Because a 10 terabyte disk, if you write or restore data to a 10 terabyte disk, let's assume with 100 megabytes per second, it takes nearly 28 hours to write 10 terabytes on a 10 terabyte disk with 100 megabytes per second. So in storage basis direct, there is an opportunity to use parallel rebuild. In essence, you leave space on all your disks, so you don't use your 6 10 terabyte disks 100%. You only use them, let's say, for 80%, so you have space left there. And then if a disk fails, the rebuild will take parallel to the 5 remaining disks. So you can rebuild your 10 terabyte missing data from the other host to the 5 remaining disks and use, in essence, 500 megabyte instead of 100 megabyte. So your rebuild time will go down from 28 hours to 6 hours. And that's very important. So you are, again, full resilient in a shorter time, and that could be very helpful if another device fails. So some other tips I have for you are networking, because networking is very important in the storage basis direct design. You have high performance computing, you need high performance between, or high performance networking between the different nodes. So the first tip, if it's possible, and it should be possible, use RDMA NICs, use SMB direct, don't use SMB3 over TCP IP. In overall, it's cheaper. What does that mean? The RDMA NICs are not really more expensive than NICs that can't do RDMA. But you get you get high performance, low latency, and your CPU is not used for your network traffic. So if you design a storage basis direct system and you don't use RDMA and you have high performance between the nodes, you have a lot of CPU usage for the TCP IP and SMB3 connections. With RDMA, there is no usage. So if you don't use RDMA, you have to put more cores in your storage basis direct design, because you need that cores for the networking, for the calculation of the networking. So go with RDMA. The next thing would be when you use NVMEs, and you have noticed that I like NVMEs a lot. NVMEs are very fast devices, so if you go with 10 gigabit NICs between your nodes, you have maybe two 10 gigabit network connections between your S2D nodes, that's not enough for NVMe, because NVMe can leverage 30 gigabits. So you have to know, if you write something on one node, and for resiliency reasons, you have to write the block that is written to one node also to another node and another node. So, for example, you write one block in your NVMe, that's very fast on the system, but then you have to leverage the network to write the block to another host in an NVMe and to another one. And if your network is not capable of doing the 30 gigabits, your transfer is slowed down to the other NVMEs, and you can't really leverage the full power of your NVMEs. So if you have NVMEs, please use 25 gigabit network adapters or 40 gig network adapters, and you can leverage the full performance of your NVMEs. It will work with 10 gigabit, but if you want the full performance, go higher. Microsoft has a new network design. It's called the switch embedded teaming, and that's really great. But we learned in many scenarios that this is not the only thing you can do. If you have the SET switch, you only have to use two network adapters in your node, and everything of your storage basis hyper-converged design, the virtual machines, the SMB traffic to the other nodes, the management, the backup network can all leverage these two adapters. That is great. But these two adapters do everything. So they have to be connected to your core infrastructure. And if you buy, for example, new switches, because these adapters are maybe 40 gig adapters, your core switches are only 10 gigabit, you have to buy new switches, and then you have to connect the new switch design with your core switch design. There you have to be very careful, because if you have if you connect all your switches because you need redundancy, if one switch fails, you can get a loop. And therefore, I like to separate the SMB traffic and the normal Hyper-V traffic to separate NICs. So the SMB NICs, I can use new switches for that, and the normal Hyper-V NICs, I can connect to the core switches. So think about that design. It has a lot of advantages. If you don't start in a greenfield environment, you have to think about your switch implementation. The last thing I have as best practice, use two SMB adapters and use separate subnets for those SMB adapters. The reason is, if you have two SMB adapters and you have two switches where you connect your SMB adapters, so you want resiliency, with two separate networks, the traffic, the SMB traffic, will be held in one switch. You don't have to have cross-switch traffic. So that's a big advantage. Microsoft can nowadays put both adapters in the same IP network, but then you have to connect the switches, and you have cross-switch traffic, and that's not always the best solution. So let's sum up my short presentation here. I think Storage Basis Direct is the fastest and most cost-efficient hyper-converged infrastructure solution on the market, because when you put Microsoft Windows servers on your solution, you have everything you need in the data center license. The Windows server, the VMs are licensed, Storage Basis is licensed. You don't need any other license. Then I predict, we have seen the Gartner Quadrant, the magic quadrant for the hyper-converged solutions. I predict that in 2013, we will see another picture. Microsoft will be, in my opinion, in the leader quadrant, because Storage Basis Direct is really a great solution. And we are in a DataON webinar. I know very well that DataON is very focused on Storage Basis Direct, and if you choose DataON, your solution really rocks. And with that, I want to hand over the presentation to Matt Lloyd from Veeam. Matt, go on.
Thank you, Karsten. Excellent presentation. And one of the things I always enjoy when I get the opportunity to participate in these types of events, it's just learning off of the others. All too often for us here at Veeam, the ecosystem is part of the equation. We're one piece towards your disaster recovery implementation. And without storage like DataON, without Microsoft's abilities, all this has to work together in concert. So when you get the opportunity to learn, understand best practices, and then start to plan how you're going to incorporate those. As Karsten mentioned, you're rarely working in a greenfield environment. You're attempting to modify your data center on the fly in order to take advantage of these new technologies when they're released, or plot when you will be able to when you own the rights based on your software licensing or hardware capabilities. So it's an important aspect, and we want to take a couple of months of doing that here. But before I do, I want to go back to something that Howard highlighted earlier in the presentation, and that was the Magic Quadrant. You notice there, Microsoft received significant accolades from Gartner around the momentum with Azure, as well as highlighting the capabilities of Office 365. So if you're working to adapt these technologies into your architecture, one of the places we see they fit most quickly, or the question arises around adopting those technologies, is around disaster recovery. So I definitely want to take a couple moments to talk through a couple of those technologies, and we'll do that throughout the course of the presentation. But if you missed it, right, we titled this portion of the presentation around REFS. We're going to get into some Azure capabilities as well as some Office 365 capabilities with Veeam. You may have heard Microsoft's released an updated patch for REFS. So if you are looking at taking advantage of that, and you are leveraging Veeam to do that, or you plan to leverage Veeam, I encourage you to go out. That KB article is KB 4077525. Now I'm stating that verbally. I don't have it in the slide, but I can throw it in the chat later on as well. It's just one of those things you may want to be aware of, because it's relatively recent, and with Microsoft Windows Server 2019 around the corner, we're going to have to plan for moving further with that. But Veeam, if you haven't heard of Veeam, 282,000 customers worldwide. It's a pretty big entity at this particular juncture, and I would be terrible if I didn't reference the fact that we protect over 16 million VMs worldwide as well. So you can start to do the math on that. Oftentimes you see slides from groups like Veeam, and they throw numbers of customers and numbers of VMs, and they never allow you to put that in context. So I want to do that. And the other aspect I want to promote here, you see the number 73 from a Net Promoter Score. That's a third party called the Timken Group. That essentially measures how likely our customers are to recommend us to other folks in the industry, or to folks they know. We take that very seriously, and if you're looking at that going, Matt, that's a C average, it's a 73, please don't look at it that way. It ranges pretty wide margins from a negative 100 to a positive 100. 30 is good, so 73 is well on the way of being somewhere near an Apple, which is in the 80s. So our customers do enjoy working with us, and a lot of it's related to how we embrace these growing technologies and allow customers flexibility in their infrastructure and in their architecture. And we do that around a couple of capabilities here. So just to put some product and some elements in perspective before I get into more of the Azure and Office 365 elements, and you see them there on the slide. But Veeam grew up out of this DR for virtual machines. And we've now grown up to protect a multitude of different capabilities, whether that's physical machines, whether that's cloud services, or whether that's in managed or public clouds. So we continue to help customers extend their abilities into these new frontiers, cloud, software as a service. A lot of these new aspects have customers asking themselves, what do I do in the event of an outage? Are the current situations applicable to what I expect from a disaster recovery capability? So we look at that from our customer standpoint and attempt to bring our product set in conjunction with those questions. So our flagship product is backup replication. Our monitoring product is Veeam One. We pair that together in our availability suite. So if you've heard that name and you see that throughout the presentation, that's where things come from. And then we have our agents, our backup for Office 365, as well as our availability for Amazon and web services or AWS. But I want to start with Direct Restore to Azure. So if you've been to Ignite, especially in the last year, if you were Ignite, one of the things that were significantly emphasized was this concept of this cloud-born applications, right? As Karsten talked about, you have the infrastructure and you don't often see greenfield there, but regarding the applications, we're seeing more applications born out of this cloud concept, right? So we've developed capabilities in conjunction with Veeam Backup Replication that are included in the product called Direct Restore to Azure. So the ability to quickly restore workloads to Azure, execute workload migrations to get to Azure, right? Because that's half the battle, is essentially migrating the workload to cloud, whether you're in a disaster recovery scenario or you want to maintain a secondary instance or copy of that data, as well as the ability to leverage Azure for on-demand services such as a test environment, right? We're all looking at scenarios today where we're having to implement security patches, operating system updates, things of that nature, and we've provided capabilities around leveraging backup data in order to take advantage of that, and in this case through Azure. So we do that through a pre-configured Azure appliance, and we continue to bring more capabilities into this, but it's all about being able to use Azure as a recovery scenario. And just so I frame this reference, we heard the different products that Veeam has in its portfolio, and we enable this capability direct to Azure throughout our product stack. So whether you're using our product that's been around for years, backup replication, or some of our new products, or if you're a fan of where we started from back in 2008, what we used to call Fast SCP, we now call Veeam Backup Free Edition, you could do that as well. So you can do a direct restore to Azure via essentially a Veeam backup file, which you can receive out of our free product. So we do have this enabled through all of our capabilities, but the ultimate capability is to get to cloud, right? Whether that's a cloud recovery, whether you're doing a P2V or V2V, physical to virtual or virtual to virtual migration, or if you're attempting to test it in an on-demand sandbox. Now, as I move forward in this, and Karsten started to allude to it in the architecture, the networking in cloud is one of the, from our perspective, we often hear customers explain the challenges associated with this. So we attempted through a new product offering, a new capability, to enable customers to make that a little easier, right? So we call that our Veeam Powered Network, or Veeam PN. As you notice here with Veeam, a lot of our product names are what the product does. My children were watching the Muppets Take Manhattan not too long ago, and this was a concept in the movie, and I started laughing. It's directly applicable to Veeam. Why not just say what the product does? So we did it here, and we came up with the name Veeam Powered Network. Essentially, it enables the ability to quickly create point-to-point connections right through a VPN and enable the customers to do that through the Azure Marketplace, or if you're a service provider, you can take advantage of this as well. The only holds barred here are you have to have an Azure subscription in order to actually enable it, right? But the deployment model is fairly simple and straightforward. And as I attempt to show that here in a graphical form, right? The whole point of this is being able to leverage the different capabilities, whether it's from a remote office, whether it's from a home office, and as these arrows build out, and I apologize, they're somewhat tiny, but you get the point. Whether regardless of the scenario, right? We enable you to directly restore to Azure. And that includes our agent products. So if you want to do that with a workstation, for example, you can. If you want to do that with a server, you can. If you want to do that with a virtual machine instance, you can. So the whole point of this is to essentially enable via a gateway which is downloadable as an OVA, from Veeam.com. It leverages OpenVPN to do seamless secure networking to Azure. And I take that one step further, right? If you incorporate these two capabilities together, we call this our Veeam Recovery in Microsoft Azure, right? This is a Veeam 9.5 feature, so it's a very recent feature of ours. This enables more to restore directly to Microsoft Azure, right? You have to have our Veeam Power Network capability in order to do this, but we're enabling recovery essentially in that scenario. So it's deployable from the Azure Marketplace, leveraging the Veeam PN appliance. Essentially, we're creating a central hub to enable you to manage this entire process. So our goal here is in line with our belief that we want to help our customers deliver any application or any service anywhere, and to help customers execute an organized recovery in that manner. Now, if you look at that, and I kind of step through it, right, as you put this whole thing together, couple of different steps here, right? You have your Veeam backup replication or your agents, essentially, whether if it's a physical machine or a cloud instance, backing up into a repository, as you can see here. And as I roll that further, you have your connection to Microsoft Direct Restore to Microsoft Azure, right? It converts the backup file data into Azure storage. So we leverage our capabilities in order to make that occur. And then from there, our direct restore to Microsoft Azure VM is essentially created and powered on immediately. So we then put that in the Azure network, and it's available. And then last but not least, we then extend the Microsoft Azure network essentially into your main office, creating a VPN tunnel. So we help organize that networking infrastructure through our GUI and enable you to take advantage of Microsoft Azure's capabilities and leverage your backups in that environment. I promised that I would get to the Office 365 capabilities. I want to do that briefly here. Essentially, for us, it's about enabling customers to provide additional availability around Office and their email specifically in that offering. So what we have found is customers are trying to figure out how they get a backup copy out of that environment, that they leverage the ability to restore individual contacts, files, emails, etc. in that environment outside of the SLAs that are provided by Microsoft. Oftentimes we see that needed more quickly. And e-discovery is another big use case here. So this is just graphically representing it out in terms of the infrastructure, how you use your Veeam backups in order to bring that back to your on-premises Exchange environment. You can securely do that with Veeam Backup for Office 365. Or if you're looking to recover those individual attributes like files, emails, etc., while we do have an on-premises solution through our Explorer that enables this, this allows you to take that capability that you may be using on-premises and adapt it, leverage it in Microsoft Office 365. And last but not least, the whole e-discovery piece. If we've seen anything with the changes in regulations as of late, more and more customers are grappling with this concept of e-discovery and being able to locate files that they need for whatever purposes it might be. We provide that capability through our Explorers as well. And we, of course, present that so you can leverage the hybrid cloud, right, and migrate that data either between Office 365 or your on-premises Exchange environment and pull that all together. So for us, it's about creating that full-on coherent disaster recovery experience with storage vendors like DataON, who are a Veeam partner in our ecosystem, and building out that message together. With that, I want to turn it over to Chris Menon from HGST. Chris?
Thank you, Matt. This is Chris Menon, HGST, part of the Western Digital umbrella. I take care of business development at Western Digital for our enterprise products. And I just wanted to share with you the storage building blocks or the guts behind what DataON has as a hardware solution with the Microsoft Windows stack. So, just to give you a brief history of the Western Digital company, when you look at our portfolio, we have the broadest storage portfolio, and we are one of the largest, or the largest storage company in the world, manufacturing products from NAND components all the way to complex object storage servers. Today in this discussion, we'll just focus on our NVMe product, which you guys also heard through Karsten mention about how to use NVMe to get the optimal configuration for storage spaces direct, and then quickly touch upon how we are taking our devices and components and creating a package solution that customers like DataON can offer their end customers from a time-to-market perspective. So in a sense, we are just simplifying the storage piece of your software-defined strategy by taking our high-quality devices and vertically integrating that into storage platforms that create an unbeatable value and TCO for our customers. Now, a couple slides on how vertical innovation plays. I just wanted to take you through the fact that the hard drives, and I think Karsten mentioned that, he mentioned a 10 terabyte, a 12 terabyte drive, and soon to be 14 terabytes. I mean, we are getting high capacity. You can rest assured that all these drives that are produced by HGST, Western Digital, are completely vertically integrated, as you see here. And then when we also talked about the NVMe products that we offer for storage spaces and Windows applications, we are completely vertically integrated on the NAND portion of NVMe. And then how do these components tie together, right? How do we take these components and deliver more value to our customers? So our vision here is that we started small with devices, and then once we perfected the devices from a strategy and execution and go-to-market, we started integrating these high-quality devices and deploying, as you see here, in storage enclosures using our HDDs in a 4U enclosure and our flash in a 2U all-flash enclosure. So we are able to optimize the total package for enterprise use, whether it's lowest vibration profile or temperature or a package solution TCO, warranty that far exceeds in value in what you could get if you were to buy individual components and do it yourself. That leads me to let this build out, leads me to where we see from, combining these devices and creating a roadmap. So we take our HDDs, NVMe, SSDs, and we create these building blocks. And so we're basically helping adoption to Windows 2016 by enabling your success, by creating these storage building blocks that you see here on this chart that you can scale out or scale up depending on your storage infrastructure. The three distinct value props that I can leave you here today with would be take advantage of the fact that we are vertically integrated from devices to creating advanced storage solutions, from JBODs to storage servers, where majority of the cost of bill of materials is storage, to cutting-edge advanced storage servers that will be based on NVMe. The second value prop is time to market. As a customer, you can simplify that, hey, my supply chain for storage needs is all set, because I can buy a completely tested solution, then trying to piecemeal the various components and then test the package itself. The third and final distinct value prop is that customers can now buy a complete storage solution and rest assured that they're getting world-class advanced technology quality product with the highest total cost of ownership. Now, so I took you through this picture of component strategy to putting that into a complete package for a TCO. Now, since there's a lot of discussion in this forum about SSDs and how they are a fast cache tier to storage spaces as well as Windows 2016, I just wanted to emphasize that from an SSD portfolio perspective, we have everything from NVMe to SaaS, which is definitely a big application for the older Windows models, as well as SATA, so SATA and NVMe here play right into the storage spaces environment. And talking about NVMe, a little more on the next slide. We have one of the highest capacity available today, depending on how you want to deploy NVMe in your infrastructure for caching. And last but not least, we work very closely with Microsoft to make sure that all our products are compatible. And DataON takes it a step further, adding these components in their solution set and making sure that the whole package is certified and approved by Microsoft. So as you see here, from NVMe to SAS to SATA to HDDs, over 70 of our products are on the Windows Server catalog today. With that, in closing, I would just want to say that innovation has been and will always play an integral role at Western Digital, having pioneered game-changing technologies for decades, from the world's very first RAM-ACK hard drive to today's advanced storage technologies. That's why we offer such a wide range of SSD, HDDs, and storage platform for every application vertical, so you can pick the right storage product to accelerate your application. With that, I will now turn it over to Lewis Walker from Qwest to talk about his experience with Storage Spaces Direct.
Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Lewis Walker. I'm the manager for our infrastructure engineering here at Qwest. We've been in business for over 35 years. We started selling computer paper and computer media, and as the computer revolution started to happen, our customers came to us and said, hey, can you buy our PCs for us? Can you help us install a switch? And from there we migrated and grew into the company that we are now. We are a Cisco-powered cloud services provider. We've been the largest cloud services provider for Cisco for the last 3 years. As part of our how can we help our customers, we've grown tremendously throughout the globe. We have data centers throughout the United States and across the world. We have network operation centers in the United States, in Manila, Philippines, and in Dublin, Ireland, to help with our 24-hour support of our cloud services, as well as being there for our customers in case they have any kind of emergencies. One of the great things about our strategy of how can we help is we get to meet other vendors and work with them on solutions to help our customers. As such, we met up with Veeam and we've met up with DataON and created some great partnerships between the two. One of the things we started out with about 3 years ago was our customers said, hey, we need a great solution to back up our VMs. What do you guys do? Or they came to us and said, hey, we heard a lot of good things about Veeam. Can you help us deploy Veeam? So about 3 years ago, we started helping customers with dedicated environments. They came out and said, hey, we want to have secondary copies or disaster recovery. So Qwest came out and said, hey, we can provide that in our cloud. We'll just give you somewhere that you could replicate to. As Veeam's product matured and we came up with the Veeam Cloud Connect offering, Qwest was a partner with them to do that, and that's where we started to see our storage requirements increase. We went to DataON. We started off with about 200 terabytes, and that grew to about 4 petabytes in about 18 months. That's how fast that Veeam Cloud Connect partnership and DataON partnership has grown. One of the reasons that we looked at DataON is the very cost-effective storage compared to traditional storage. If you look at something like a NetApp or a EMC storage type platforms, especially for backup and disaster recovery, those are pretty costly, and it would make it difficult to be competitive with offering services to our customers at a reasonable price. Right now we have one of the lowest prices at $9 per terabyte for Veeam Cloud Connect services for backup as a service. And we wouldn't be able to do that if it wasn't for the cost effectiveness of the DataON solution. They're very highly available with the S2D, the high IOPS and throughput that was reviewed with others during this call, the integration with RAFS and Veeam Cloud Connect support, and the flexibility that the DataON solution provides us is very valuable to us. When we start off with a typical deployment, we'll go with the way that we configure our three-way mirrors and our erasure coding and such, depending on whether it's disaster recovery or whether it's backup as a service. We typically start off with a 5-node deployment that gives us about 500 terabytes. From that 5-node deployment, we do add up to 3 more nodes so that we have an 8-node stack, and that 8-node stack typically gives us about 1 petabyte of storage for disaster recovery and backup as a service. These are the detailed configurations. We basically use NVMe's and SAS HDDs as our platform. We are not using the 3-tier platform that was described earlier today. We're just using this 2-tier. And then we have our JBODs with some 10 terabyte hard drives for keeping the cold storage. Again, what this has been able to give us to do, what this has been able to allow us to do is to provide a very cost-effective and competitive solution for our customers for their backup as a service and their disaster recovery as a service, leveraging Veeam and DataON solutions. We have improved backup times, increased usability and capacity on the S2D stack from DataON, going anywhere from 60 to 80% capacity utilization on the hard drives that we have. Some of the things that we've learned during our implementation, starting off with the 5-node stacks and going up to the 8, was it's very important to consider how you distribute your clustered shared volumes. If you create one large volume, that could be pegged to having one node own that. So what we've done is, what do I need for a capacity? And if I have 5 nodes in the stack and let's say I need 100 terabytes, I would create 10 terabyte nodes or CSVs and distribute those throughout those 5 nodes. That way, as data comes in and uses those, it gets distributed evenly. The other thing that we do on the back end is we don't necessarily present the storage directly to the S2D stack. We'll create a VM, a Windows 2016 VM with storage spaces direct, and then we'll add virtual VHDXs to each of those clustered shared volumes to help distribute that load, as well as to give us better capacity. With, say, for example, if I need 100 terabytes solution for one of my customers, if I do storage spaces direct inside a VM, I can have a bunch of VHDXs distributed evenly throughout the cluster shared volume, and I can also present 100 terabytes. I'm not limited to the maximum size of a VHDX at that point. Another thing to consider is it's recommended not to go over 32 cluster shared volumes per stack. So if you have a 3-node stack, an 8-node stack, or 16-node stack, you really need to consider how you're sizing those clustered shared volumes so that they can be distributed evenly throughout the nodes on the stack. And lastly, one of the things that have bit us in the butt is not paying attention to the BIOS settings, things like putting the hard drives to sleep, things like power distribution and such. Making sure you maximize those so that your S2D stack can provide the maximum settings and availability for your needs. With that, this solution not only provides backup times that are better, but it also provides high IOPS performance. With other solutions, if I were to pay a similar price, there's no way I'd be able to do disaster recovery as a service. The IOPS just wouldn't be there. The way this S2D and DataON solution works, it gives us great IOPS at a very low cost and allows us to do disaster recovery. Another advantage of traditional software-defined storage is being able to attach a JBOD and getting that increased space. If you look at something like a VMware vSAN, you're basically that node that you have, whatever capacity you have in that node, that's what you're limited to. You're not able to have a JBOD that you could put disks in to help you increase that storage space without having to increase your compute capacity, which you may not need. You may just need storage. With being able to use a JBOD, this really helps out. You can go up to 16 nodes, which gives you 60 to 80% usability of the hard drives, which is a great advantage over, so I was just talking with a Cisco solution and their 3260s. They're limited to 33% of the disk space. Because of the way they do their HyperFlex technology, you will never get more than 33% of the disks that you put in there. And the cost per gigs is definitely something that helps us be competitive again with our customers. And that's all I have. I'll turn this back over to Mr. Lowe. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Louis. Thanks, everyone, for an awesome presentation. And Louis, what you shared is actually really good nuggets, some of the stuff that I would even start talking to my customers. So thank you for those insights. I will quickly go through some slides, then we'll answer some of the questions. First slide, we do have a pretty broad portfolio now, given all the deployment have storage spaces. So we have 1U, 2Us, and 2U for nodes. So definitely visit our website to look at those. The second is we did launch our Kepler 2-node appliance last week at a big Intel event. We have a landing page on that. So there was a customer asking a question about when's available. It's available today. And we are actually in the deployment phase already of deploying a lot of 2 nodes. And the goal is really to let the customer have a good selection of proliferation of using storage spaces and really have the expansion capability. So definitely visit our website to check all the 2-node activities and kind of our positioning of a pre-validated, pre-certified platform. We have a lot of deployment options. I want to share one last slide with you guys, which is here's some of the key parameters that we always want to have our customer to look at as we design the solution. So as you look at solutions, you want to make sure that you evaluate definitely your workload and application. We really take that seriously, making sure that the solution itself addresses your workload requirements. Understanding the sizing of virtualization and Hyper-V layer, which impacts a lot of our decision on the compute side. I think Carsten mentioned earlier about SMB RDMA fabric. I think this is a very key ingredient to a successful deployment for S2D, which we have spent a lot of time with our customers. Understanding the ability to connect it to your core switches, whether using traditional SET or SET from Microsoft or traditional connection, which Carsten mentioned, which we've done both ways. Looking at your storage architecture, how do you leverage the different way of your configuration, either 3-tier, hybrid, all flash. All these are addressing different workloads. So understanding your workload and addressing those topics is important. And lastly, understanding your useful capacity, how you grow, making sure you have enough reserve capacity for fast rebuild, like Carsten mentioned. So all these are just key design criteria our customers think about, and we discuss with them to make sure that we're on the same page.
Howard, we may have lost your audio.
Yeah, Howard is gone. This is Carsten. I want to answer one of the questions while Howard is reconnecting, I assume. So it was a question from the audience. For clusters with 4 or more nodes, do you recommend using dual parity erasure encoding or sticking with mirroring to keeping the highest performance? So we have done most of our implementations with the design. It was called multi-resilient volume, so where you have three-way mirroring and double parity, and we have no customer who has really performance issues there. So you can leverage double parity for the lower performance tiers, even in a multi-resilient volume. And in the next server that was announced yesterday, I don't know if you have seen it, but Windows Server 2019 will be available in the second half of this year. They have improved the tiering mechanism. Microsoft is talking about 3 times, so that's even better than before. So I don't know if Howard is back again. Howard, are you there?
I think he's still trying to dial in. Can we move to the second question?
Sure. So this is Matt Lloyd. And Karsten, you may want to provide some feedback into this as well. I want to be conscientious of that. There was a question that was asked related to support for deduplication on REFS. A specific example related to virtual machines on Hyper-V. I would guide you to be cautious there, and that's part of the reason why I referred back to the Microsoft KV article, because Microsoft made some patches available at the very end of February. That KV, again, for reference, is 407.7525, and it provides some support for not only larger volumes, but some performance improvements, right? So I would encourage our customers to do some testing around that first. We definitely have seen in circumstances where it improves Veeam's backup performance, although part of that is related to our capabilities around what we call our spaceless full backup technology. Essentially, in some cases, depending on the data, and of course with any deduplication technology, individual results vary, but we've seen some very nice statistics around that in some ways rival what you'll see with some deduplication appliances. So I've definitely urged some caution there and do some testing, but I know there have been some improvements as of late.
Yeah, and may I add to that, Carsten here speaking. So REFS is supported very well in Storage Spaces Direct. The deduplication part will come with Server 2019. It is available in Windows Server 1709. So the Veeam annual release, but unfortunately Storage Spaces is not target of this release. So if you want to use Storage Spaces Direct with REFS and deduplication, you have to wait for Windows Server 2019. And so be a little bit cautious there, like Matt said. So wait a little bit, and then you can use REFS with Storage Spaces Direct. There is another question: how does parallel rebuild hit 500 megabytes per second? A single HDD can write 200, and that's even too much for a single HDD. I really don't think you can write 200, but I was talking about the parallel rebuild. So when you use parallel rebuild, the data, if one HDD is lost, the data is rebuilt to multiple HDDs in the same server. So if you have, for example, 6 HDDs in every server, one disk is lost, and you have spare space on the HDD. So you don't use all the space for your virtual disk. You have space left. Then the system can rebuild the missing blocks from other nodes where a copy is to this node and write it in 5 still functional HDDs in the spare part. So then you can leverage the performance of 5 HDDs, and that sums up to, if your one HDD has 100 megabyte write performance and you write parallel to 5 of them, you have 500 megabytes. I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Carsten. And I think we still have one question for Howard on the availability of our new Kepler 2 node hyper-converged appliances.
Yes, sorry I was out there a little bit. So very excited that we launched Kepler 2 nodes last week at an Intel conference. We have a landing page you guys definitely go to, is ready to deploy. We have actually several customers now in the deployment stage, so definitely give us a call, and we want to make sure we understand your requirement and build something for you. Louis, any last words? for our audience?
I do not have any last words.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. I appreciate it, and looking forward to talking to you guys in person in the next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.